Hello, and welcome to the Craft and Calling podcast. I am your host, Christine Marie, and I am so looking forward to our conversation today. We are really dedicating this conversation to young entrepreneurs, those who are wanting to get involved in the trades, those who maybe have their foot halfway in. Maybe you grew up watching a family member or frankly just kind of watching the trades and wanting to get involved. So this is really dedicated to those who have an entrepreneurial spirit and are looking to really make great leaps in the trade space. There's so much potential here, and there's a lot that we need to know, especially in this ever-changing world with the rise of AI and just a lot's happening on the political front. It's a little nuts. And so this is the time for us to just kind of settle into, okay, well, what can we do now? What is our responsibility if we want to get into this field and into this industry? And I am so incredibly privileged to be joined by Brad Poulos. Brad, you are a lifelong entrepreneur, educator. You live in Canada, but you are gracing us with your presence. Best-time selling author of multiple books, and I love your story and how you're really helping businesses in real time. So you're talking literally from the field. So thank you for joining us here today.
Looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it too. Brad, I would love to hear a little bit from you. You know, we were talking in the green room about you've got a whole bunch of courses that you're teaching, and you're working specifically with this group of folks, these young entrepreneurs. And as we were talking before, whether it's a tech startup or it's a trade startup or they're going in to acquire a business, there's such core tenets of business principles that cross all industries. And I'd love to really start with kind of the first one that you presented to me, because that's so important. And it's easy sometimes to go in with a big hammer for a little tiny nail. And so what's kind of the first step? How can we really prepare ourselves to get into this new industry, or any new industry for that matter?
Well, we teach our students to start from the problem and work your way out from there. So many people start with some product idea without giving much thought to the problem that it solves. Probably tech startups and engineers are the worst culprits when it comes to that, because it can be done, it should be done. However, so sometimes you're better if you're not burdened with those capabilities, and you're just somebody who has an idea around a problem that one could solve. So so that it doesn't have to be a complicated problem. So the example I often give my students is, let's say you're in an area of a big city and there's not a convenience store in that area. Well, that's a problem for people, and you can solve that problem. The answer isn't earth-shattering. It's open a convenience store. Doesn't mean you can't do it really, really well and outperform all of the other convenience stores in the city. But like I say, it doesn't have to be a complicated problem. However, the most successful businesses are built around solving some problem for somebody.
I love that you're just starting out with the simplicity of that. You know, one of the things that has really stood out to me is, what is my own problem that I can solve, and then turn that into a business. You know, that's actually been how a lot of folks have started in the trades, and then much other industries as well, because they had an issue and nobody else could solve it for them. And so they kind of solved it for themselves and then turned it into a profitable business. So how is it kind of like, what are the first steps to going about solving for a problem specifically in the trades? Because there's usually a solution. If I have a plumbing issue, if I've got a carpentry issue, like, how can people go about identifying, yes, this is a problem and it's not being solved well, I can come in and be I can be a difference in the market.
Yeah. So the truth is, most businesses are started around the founders' either education, their experience in business or working life, or their hobbies. So we start with things that we know, and I call that scratching your own itch. And it's a guarantee that you have a market of at least one yourself, right? So you kind of start there. But then you should never, ever assume that you know everything about the particular problem just because you have it. That's a very dangerous and in some ways arrogant way of approaching things. So you go and you talk to people that you think have the problem, and you're really trying to do two things there. So the first one is understand that problem intimately.
Mm-hmm.
So that that involves having deep conversations with the people that have the problem, but not only just the people with the problem, but also the people around it. So if a good example, because I don't have one jumping in my head for the trades, is let's say you were trying to deal with something around the homeless population. Well, I mean, obviously you should talk to homeless people. Like, sure, go ahead and start there. But I can probably think of 10 other communities that you'd want to talk to really understand that problem. You know, you
Right.
want to talk to families, you want to talk to first responders, you want to talk to people in hospitals that end up dealing with these people. You want to talk to the people that are currently trying to solve the problem.
Right.
Because there's something to be learned, you know, from all of them. So you have to have this deep understanding of the problem. Then you have to kind of repeat that process and really, really understand the people with the problem. And the reason why that's important, and it's important separate from the problem itself, is because at some point in time, hopefully, we're going to be trying to promote some product or service to them. And you have to understand what makes them tick in order to do that effectively. In marketing, we call that, you know, marketing segmentation, first of all. So divide the market up into logical kind of groupings of people that have some kind of similarities. We usually do that around one of three categories of variables, we call them. Either demographics, you know, how old they are, how much do they make, where do they live, what's their job, what gender are they, all that kind of stuff. Kind of boring, most of that. The really exciting stuff is what we call psychographics. So that's understanding their values, their beliefs, the things that really do drive them. And then the last thing is behavioral variables. So how do they use the product or service? Or if you don't have a product or service yet, then how do they experience the problem? And if you understand all of that, then you can craft marketing messages and you can promote your product or service in a way that's going to resonate with them. So here's an example. I drive a very boring SUV. And the reason I chose that SUV is because I happen to play in a band, and I'm the poor guy who has to schlep around all the gear. So I can't have a sports car, right? I have to have something that I used to have a van, but I managed to get like one level of less boringness from that, and I have this small SUV.
I love it.
but I'm not the only category.
Yeah.
There's lots of other people, like say young families.
Yeah.
A small SUV is a perfect vehicle for young families. Why? Because they have a lot of stuff to carry too. It's just different stuff, but also they might have two kids, and so you know it all just leads to that being a logical vehicle for them. And then a third category might be like campers. And so you're not going to talk to those different groups the same way. You're not going to try to entice them to try and buy your product with the same messages and also in the same places. So like, for example, you're going to find me reading certain, well, less and less are they paper now, but we'll just use the magazine metaphor, right?
Right.
We don't read the same magazines. We're not on the same Facebook groups. We're not in the same, we don't watch the same TikTok channels. So if with that deep understanding of the customer and what makes them tick, what groups they're in, all of that, then we can be much more successful, hopefully, in finding them and ultimately resonating them with the messages around our product and our service.
So good. I really love how you broke up the people piece. So they have to understand the problem. And by way of how to do that, it's by talking about the people with the problem and then talking to the people in the surrounding areas who would be related to the problem. And I'm thinking, honestly, anyone who has a trades business, for the most part, has the opportunity to do both home services and commercial. And especially when you move into the commercial space, there's a lot of people who touch the problem, beyond the decision makers, a lot of referral sources even too, because in that process, you actually get to know who are potential partners in that as well, rather than the direct end customer. So there's a lot there in terms of understanding the problem. And through those conversations, we get to understand the people. So understand the problem, understand the people, And I love how you broke this up in just such a simple way. Understanding the people, honestly, there's the three categories to your point of the demographics, which is literally just the facts about them, the psychographics of who they are, their values, beliefs, motivators, drivers, and the behaviors of, well, okay, then what's the how to? How do they actually engage with the problem?
Yeah.
And you said something here that I want to touch on for everyone listening. Experience. How do they experience the problem? And Brad, this is something that's been so not talked about throughout most of kind of marketing history. And I think that we're starting to see more of this. And this is my prediction for 2026 is that experience is going to be one of the driving factors for purchase. Because what is the experience you're going to give me? The experience of peace of mind, both, the emotional experience, the actual and it's experience at every single touch point of how you're coming in with the solution. And experience is so important because people are buying more so off of how they feel than ever before because there's so many options to buy. There's copious solutions available. So I love that you said, how do they experience the problem? Because when you understand the emotional relationship to the problem, then you can create an emotional solution that really scratches that itch. So one of the things that we really encourage folks, to your point about what's the messaging that's going to resonate. Resonate is an emotional word. That messaging, it needs to talk about the transformation on the emotional level, in addition to the physical change to their home, property, whatever it is that the solution solves for. What can you speak a little bit to that on the emotional experience aspect?
Yeah, so you obviously have some grounding in marketing. There's no question about it. Whether you got it along the way or it's formal, I'm not sure, but I can definitely detect it there. So yeah, we talk about the customer journey. So so touch points is actually one of the terms that we'll use. Everything from not even being aware of the product or service or company that we're talking about, all the way through the journey of learning about that, starting to develop, awareness, knowledge, liking, preference, and then finally commitment, which is the 5 stages of the funnel that I like to use anyway. There are different funnel models, but that's the one I like. Right through to purchase and then ultimately happy customer. In complex situations, there can be maybe a dozen of those different touch points. Even for a tradesperson, there's probably at least 5. And so I think it's important to give thought to each one of those and try to make sure that at each one of those stages, we are a pleasure to do business with, right? We're easy to do business with. It's we're understandable. So, an example would be staying away from jargon. It might make you sound really smart, but it's probably not helpful to your end customer. Obviously empathizing with the customer is going to endear you to them and give you a leg up over the competition if it came to that.
I love that. And Brad, I'd love to hear your thoughts on when it comes to understanding both the problem and the people. How do you encourage these young entrepreneurs? Is it pound the pavement? Is it make phone calls? Like how do they do that?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So there's a sort of a guru in the lean startup world named Steve Blank, and he came up with this saying, get out of the building. Okay. There's no information in the building. All the information is out there, right? So get out of the building. I have my own version of that, which is, if you're not sure what to do, go do anything. And there's no luck on your parents' basement couch, right? So you make your luck by being out there. So yeah, you have to go talk to them. Unfortunately, for some people where that's not the easiest thing to do. For folks like you and me, it's probably not that hard. But there was a time when I was quite different from how I am, and I would have found it quite daunting to have to go speak to people that I don't know. But that is what it requires. You've got to get out and try to find the people. You go where they are. Yes. Try to find the people that are ultimately, that at least you hypothesize are going to be in your target market. You might even find out you're wrong, but hey, isn't it better to find out you're wrong before you've gone ahead and started your business and all that? So yeah, it's
yes.
It's so very. I face this with my students a lot. they want to do surveys. Now, the great thing about a survey is that you can get lots and lots of answers, because we have ways today through that are free. You and I can hop on Facebook or LinkedIn. We've probably got thousands of connections between those two. If I add my ex people, it's to over 10,000. And so great, I can get lots and lots of data points perhaps. But the problem with a survey, I'm only going to get answers to the questions that I thought to ask at the very beginning.
Yes.
And that's not what we're doing here, because we don't know all the questions to ask. A lot of the questions I'm going to ask are because of the answer I just got to the previous one. So you have to do an interview. You've got to have a conversation with people. Down the road, when you have some more maybe fully formed hypotheses, a survey can be a great tool for that if you want to verify or if you want to quantify something. But if you really want to get good qualitative data, you have to go and speak to people.
So I'm so grateful that you brought that up, because there have been times where we've done surveys and times where we've done surveys over the phone. The ones over the phone, every time without fail. And I've done a decent amount of them. Every time I get more information, because I can hear the tone in their voice. I can pull on the string and be like, wait, can we pause there and unpack it? And then it becomes more of a story rather than just kind of those. It's like what you're saying with those three different aspects of understanding the people. They actually might come in and just give demographical type of answers, or just very high level behavioral, but then you can really get down into the psychographics of, okay, well, what were the drivers? What were the motivators? What do you value? When you really can pull it out of them. And man, do people like talking about themselves. They really do. And the other thing you said, Brad, just reminds me, God love it. I went and beat the streets. And Brad, you said it's probably not as daunting for you and me. Oh no, it was daunting for me. I had not cookies. I had donuts, and I was going to different offices, and man, I felt awful for being there. It was so funny. What that process revealed to me was my own internal hangups and what I needed to conquer in order to proceed with confidence. I had no idea that I felt that way.
Everybody needs donuts.
Everybody needs donuts. It was so, well, you know what happened that was actually so good for me? It was so humbling and it was so good for me. This woman is like, why are you here? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I didn't say that, but that was kind of my approach, where I was like, I'm sorry for being here. Because I felt that way. Like, I felt like I was interrupting her. I'm sorry for being here. Let me just hand you donuts and run away and not even tell you about my business. You know what she said to me? She said, you're not being clear. And for that reason, I'm not going to even accept your donuts. And then she shut the door and I was like, okay. And it was such a good kick in the pants. It was so humbling. It was exactly what I needed to then go back and really drill down. Why am I here in the first place? And am I confident enough to go and knock on more doors? And I think that for most people, we're sitting behind our computers most days, and we're not having to do the hard work of engaging. And when we do, man, it's, people. I actually had a conversation with someone yesterday, and she mentioned how AI can be used as a place to, we hide behind AI. There's a lot of people that are showing up where it's not actually them online. And so are we using AI? How much are we using these aspects around technology as tools or as crutches that we're hiding behind? And so that was a really good moment. And I think that it's worth bringing up here, because with AI, we can move faster, but we can actually end up not getting the skeletons out of the closet that are necessary for growth to get us to the next level.
You made me think of something there, and it's I have a saying which I stole from Steve Jobs, who stole from Picasso. And the saying is, good artists copy, great artists steal. So I'm going to steal something from my brother. My brother wrote a very good book on sales. And one of the concepts in that book is, and it has to do with the situation where you were in, where it's a personal selling situation. Always have something in your mind and something in your hand. Never walk into a sales situation without something in your mind. So something that you're there to accomplish, and you better have it very clear in your mind. Wow. Although you may not be clear, you may be a little less clear about it with the customer out of the gate, but you've got a purpose for being there and something in your hand. And there's something in your hand. Well, in your case, could be a free donut. Here's a
Yeah.
sample. Or it could be a flyer, or it could be a brochure, or it could be some swag. But that is one of the sales tips that really resonated for me when I read his book. I've spent my own my fair share of time in sales over the years, and I kind of wish I had had his book before I had ever started, because there were many times when I failed to do that myself, and it made sales meetings uncomfortable. And I think even a tradesperson can, going to see either a commercial or even a homeowner account, can still use that principle.
That's so good. I actually Brian from the chat just asked this question. Hi, Brian. Good to see you. He says, where does your self-worth come from?
Oh, gosh.
I know. That's a heavy hitter.
Mine comes from, well, to the degree I have any, mine comes from decades of trying, failing, succeeding here and there. And by no means did I start out my adulthood with a very, very strong sense of self-worth. I guess some, of course. I was lucky because I started my first business actually when I was 14. And so I had a chance to, and like many of the others I've started over the years, I didn't end up, having a really successful exit from this business. So what it was a small chicken farm. My parents owned a motel in Niagara Falls, Ontario. We had a lot of property behind this motel. So I built a chicken coop and I bought some chickens, and I was selling eggs to the local, just to the neighbors, And in one afternoon, my German Shepherd put me out of business. So yeah, sadly.
Cute. Oh, darn,
so yeah, and she didn't even eat any of them. She was just playing, but she didn't know better.
Oh.
So I didn't bother restarting, but I had a nose for business early on, and I've always been kind of drawn that way. I was also lucky enough to be involved in this organization called Junior Achievement in high school, where we formed companies. It was kind of ran through. It didn't have anything to do with the school, but it ran through the school year, and you started a company and raised some money and built a product and sold it. And then ultimately all 5 years that I was a member of it, we actually gave back everybody their dollar because we raised stock $1 at a time, and you could only sell one to a single person. So your parents couldn't just, capitalize you. Yeah. We gave everybody back a dividend. So we made money all 5 years.
Cool.
So I had been the president of 3 companies before, in 3 out of the 5 years, I was the president of our company, and I'd been a president of 3 companies before I graduated from high school. And probably some of your listeners are wondering, wait a minute, why did he spend 5 years in high school? Well, that's because at the time here we had a grade 13, which we no longer have. I didn't have to do a repeat year or anything like that.
And for those listening, Brad he lives in Canada.
Yeah. So,
that's, I love this question, Brian. And Brian even put in the chat, experience is the best teacher. And it really, really is. And I'm glad that you asked that, because, even with this comment and this story around going around with the donuts, confidence, it really is so important. Do we actually believe in what we're doing? And I think that that's actually a necessary question, because you mentioned something along these lines, Brad, where it's you're going so fast, you're building the business. And then if you don't go through this process, you could actually build a business. And isn't it better that you find out you're wrong before you really get started? And so this, by way of doing this process, it builds confidence. So the experience builds confidence and the conversations builds confidence. Yeah, this is really an issue. Yes, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is necessary. And then also, to your point of being in peer groups and receiving mentorship and really getting kind of the immersion of there's other people who are trying with you. That's so important. So experience, the confidence of literally doing exactly what you're talking about, the problem, and understanding the people. And then third, to your point of peer groups and mentorship and being in a community where you get to fail safely. And actually, I'd like to get to that, because you mentioned this right out of the gate in the green room, which I was so grateful for. Failure has become like a bad word. It's become this thing that everyone's terrified of. When you look back over the dawn of time, we are built on the backbone of failure. All of the greatest inventions have been because they failed 999 times. And on the 11th time, or 1,000th time, they figured out the light bulb. So
Right.
can you tell me a little bit more about failure? Because I think that that's really something we need to lean into here for every single entrepreneur listening to this.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I have a couple of principles, I guess, around failure. So the first one is that you cannot be a failure until you stop. So was Edison a failure 9,999 times, right? Or was he just in the process of succeeding?
Yes.
And I like to frame it in the latter way. So when failure is a post facto term, right? It's looking backwards. So if I'm still going, I'm not a failure. I'm just in the process of succeeding. But the other thing, and this speaks very strongly to listening to the evidence, making the small bets, and trying to figure out, are we doing the right stuff? My new definition of failure, which I have stolen from somebody that I have long forgotten who it was, but I did not make this up. And that is that failure is waking up in the morning, figuring out you're doing the wrong stuff, and you just keep going, not pivoting. That's failure, right? That's unforgivable. So you've got to listen to the evidence. And when the evidence tells you to do something different, and sometimes it might tell you, like I can tell you about a couple of businesses that I've been involved with where we thought we were onto something, and lo and behold, we weren't.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? And at some point, you got to pack up and you got to go do something else. You got to listen to the evidence and stop telling the world that they're all wrong and you were right. And if only they were smart enough to listen to you.
Why can't anyone else be right like me?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm the common denominator.
Yeah.
That's funny. I love, what's funny, listening to the evidence. You said that, Brian, and man, that resonates so deeply. If something feels off, stop. Pay attention. What's going on? Really take a moment to lean into the discomfort. Discomfort is a sign. And usually in the discomfort and in the uncertainty, there's growth there. And the growth might be continue going, it's hard, or it might be completely pivot and choose a new path because there's something blocking, there's a block here. So either push through it and power through. And that's where to our third point earlier of, the peers and mentors, man, that sounding board is really important. Do you have people in your corner that you trust, that you can bring, hey, something doesn't seem right. I'm getting evidence here. What should I do? And really listening to it. So I'm so grateful you said that because that resonated with me a lot because it's so easy for us as entrepreneurs to be bullheaded and stubborn, but then also to not ever take a pause and not ever truly listen to the evidence that might be external or even the evidence internal. We've got, you were talking about psychographics earlier. We have internal evidence and internal data that we need to listen to as we're going.
Yeah. And that now it's important though that peer group be the right one and that they be willing to. Have you heard of the concept of radical candor?
No.
Oh, so it's this lady by the name of Kim Scott wrote a book. It's called Radical Candor, and in it she introduces this concept. And it's as a biz prof, I love it because we love these 2x2 matrices, right? So 2 axes. The one axis is you care personally, and the second is you're prepared to be direct. You're willing to be direct. So most bosses actually live in the quadrant where they care a lot, but they're not willing to be direct.
Yes.
And it's called ruinous empathy, right?
Wait, what is it? What is it?
Ruinous empathy.
Ruinous empathy. I've never heard of that.
So, and that's where most bosses actually sit.
Yeah.
Most bosses, we've all probably had a boss that, we just never told us that we were doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
That's almost worse than the one who always tells you you're doing something wrong, right? So, but if you have both, that's called radical candor. You're willing to tell people the things that and the thing is, it's a gift. because it's uncomfortable for the person to do it just as much as it is for the person to receive it. So I'll give you a small example. Last week, I had a student, I mentor student groups, and there was a group of 6 people who asked me for a meeting. And so I jumped onto Zoom for my meeting, and they were all there already, which is good. They were all on time. I was right on time, and they were there like at least 1 second before I was. And I was facing 6 black squares. No cameras.
Well, hold on. I don't know where you went, but let's bring you back. You were facing 6 black squares.
I was facing 6 black squares, yeah. And
That's the irony of the timing of losing you right at that moment.
That's funny, yeah. So I let it go on for about 30 seconds. And we got through the how's everybody doing, that sort of thing, but no meat. And then finally I just said, are you guys serious? Like, are you seriously not going to put your cameras on? And they're like, well, they were a little taken aback, of course. 4 of the 6 put their cameras on. I think the other 2 were literally in a position where they couldn't, so I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
And they said to me, well, sir, you have to understand that our generation is normalizing no cameras. Wow. And I said, that's a bunch of BS. Don't give me that. Okay. First of all, your generation, they're 20. Okay. Your generation is not running the business community. Like, when you go and get a job, you won't be reporting to other 20, not, you might be reporting to a 20 something, but they won't be 20. And they thanked me. And I said, guys, it would have been much easier for me to not be a jerk and just to go through this meeting and not say anything, but I owe it to you to show, to model to you the right behavior. And I practice it every single day.
I'm so grateful for this, Brad, because it's to be honest, I've got a business, and I think that I actually have erred on the side of not bringing things up. And I'll say my excuse, again, with the kind of hiding, my excuse is like, well, I really want to be kind, and I want to be encouraging, and I want to encourage growth rather than kind of almost like the pain of the discipline through growth. And it's funny. I think at the end of the day, it's really for my own sake that I'm doing this, because it's uncomfortable for me.
I think if you really process it, the being kind is to tell them the right thing.
Yeah.
To tell them where they're going wrong. I had somebody practice it on me 30 years ago, my first management job. And when I was giving my first ever set of performance reviews, and it was by a person I had huge respect for. And after I did his performance review, I kind of very dramatically, I pushed it to the side of the desk and I said, okay, review me. And he had previously been a peer, and now I was his supervisor. And I said, like, are you sure, Brad? And I'm like, oh yeah, like, sure. I want to be better. And he goes, well, you're a tyrant. And I'm like, what? Ooh. So I learned from that. And and interestingly, last summer, because I started to give a talk on radical candor, I wanted to use his name. So I hunted him down. He's retired now. I hunted him down. He lives on Vancouver Island in a beautiful, sleepy community. And we had a great little chat. And now you have to understand, that conversation for me, that was life-changing. I've never forgotten that. I will go to my deathbed remembering that conversation. I asked him 2 things. One, when you think of me as a boss, to the extent you do, I'm not that naive to think that you think of me often, but what do you think? He goes, oh man, you were a great boss. So obviously I turned something around. But second, and the real telling thing, this is the real telling thing. He didn't remember the conversation.
Wow.
Life-changing for Brad. He didn't remember it.
Chills all over. Oh my God.
So watch your words.
You know what's wild? Well, and how much, so when you say watch your words, do you mean it in relationship to the fact that, he shouldn't have said that, or that?
No, he was practicing radical candor long before Kim Scott ever came up with the idea. But one, just be aware of the fact that this
Yeah.
can happen. So be careful with your words.
Yes.
By the way, I left a word out. There was an adjective for the word tyrant.
Good point. Yeah, that actually grounds it more, doesn't it? Adds a punch to it.
I thought there might be kids on this, so I didn't include it.
That was probably good. I'm thinking back to an old boss. She was actually, and you know, it's so funny. She was part of the reason why I started my own business at 26. And she changed me. The way that I show up with such high standards for excellence, she changed me, and it was awful working for her. And I changed as an entrepreneur, or I grew into being able to be an entrepreneur, you know? And so I think that this is just such an important part about the receiving, but then also the delivering of, am I willing to sit in my own discomfort and cause discomfort for somebody else for the purpose of growth? Brian says here, which I just love, he says, be a kick-ass boss without losing your humanity. And I love that aspect. And even, you know, this whole question, okay, well, what does it mean to be human? And, you know, this whole question has really come into scrutiny with the rise of AI, because these bots are coming in smarter than we are. So then really what makes us human, and the emotions really do. So be a kick-ass boss without losing the emotional equity you can build in trust and the exchange of it.
You have to be human, but you know what else you have to be? A chameleon. Right? So I wouldn't talk to you the same way as I might talk to Sharon or Bob or Steve.
Right.
So I think a really good leader, without going overboard with the concept, is good at crafting the right message for the right person in the right moment.
You know, it's funny. I'm thinking about, you know, chameleon in some ways has been used in negative terms to be inauthentic, or like you're shape-shifting. Who are you really? Yet when you know how to, it's like I am authentically me internally, and the way that I show up is always going to be adhering to my own set of principles and who I am in that regard, of like my own ideal and in the nucleus, but then the external manifestation of that. That's what is tailored. And, you know, for folks listening, the more I've gotten involved with C-level executives, the more I've engaged with them, the more I realized how much leadership is relational. So if you want to grow a business, become emotionally intelligent, figure yourself out, figure out the principles and rules by which you will live your life, and do not be afraid to your point, deliver feedback and hold to those standards, but know how to exchange empathy. And that's part of the definition of emotional intelligence, is to be able to handle interpersonal relationships with wisdom and with empathy. So both of those are so important.
And it's not a negative thing. It's just adapting.
Yeah. Yes. Right. So good. Before we jump off, any last words from you regarding entrepreneurs who want to get into this space? Understand the problem, understand the people, surround yourself with peers, listen to kind of the evidence that's being shown to you, be willing to fail often. Anything else?
Well, don't be afraid to try it. You know, it's not the end of the world if you have to, you know, if you, I don't like to use the word fail, but if you have to change direction, or even if you have to go back to having a job, chase your dream. Like now's the time to do it. We live in a time now when it's so much easier to start a business because of the tools that are out there for us. You know, different web tools, things like AI. So just go chase your dream, because I'm certainly glad that I did it.
Brad, thank you so much for joining us today. How can people learn more about you?
So my name is Brad Poulos, Poulos. My website is that, Bradpoulos. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me that way. I have 3 books and a short story on Amazon. You can just search for my name. My books are pretty much aimed at small business people. So
wonderful. Brad, thank you so much for your time. Y'all, thank you so much for joining.